Hello and welcome to the Golden Sports Report, episode 75. I'm Andy,
I'm Dylan. And I'm Chris.
and today we are catching up on a lot of hockey as we had to cancel our Sunday show, and I said we'd have a show Monday, and we canceled that. So we're here now, and yes, we have to talk about the draft. We have to talk about free agency. The Sabres have been all over the place. They had the second most draft picks, and they probably made one of the most moves out of anybody. They've signed, I believe, five players and traded for one. So we'll talk about that later. First, I'd like to, you know, send our condolences to Rick Jenneret, and hope he gets better soon and recovers quickly. There's an 85% chance that he will recover fully from his throat cancer, but as an announcer, throat cancer is big. That's big. Yeah, our thoughts are with him and his family, and yeah, so time to begin. Chris, A to F, Tim Murray's draft, and how, what did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? Kind of your opinion on the deal.
A plus. Um, A plus for sure. Uh, with Tim Murray's draft. Um, maybe just an A. Yeah, I'd go with an A. Basically, obviously Sam Reinhart is going to be huge. I wanted him really badly. Huge on Sam Reinhart, and whether he comes up next year or stays down, that's a different story. Um, Second round, we got arguably one of the best like power forward tough guys in the draft, and Brendan Lemieux. And in an interview at the draft, he said he was really disappointed he didn't go in the first round, and he's just going to use that as fire to just beat the shit out of all the other teams that looked over him. So, and then we traded up in the second round to grab the center that played alongside of Nick Ritchie. So that should be interesting. Obviously, Nick Ritchie, top 10 pick, and one of the better forwards in the draft. But obviously someone who played with him, he might have ended up actually being overshadowed by him. He's probably not going to turn out to be anything huge, but you never know. Um, Disappointed we didn't trade back up into the first, but Tim Murray definitely tried. I know that. He sent out at least like 10 or so trades, seven of which uh, were involving both second round picks and a player. So that's a thing. Obviously, teams just didn't want to trade. So we were given an A or an A plus by a lot of the uh, guys, a lot of the analysts and stuff. So that's good news.
Yeah, I saw USA Today and ESPN both give us very high ratings, and they both were very impressed by Tim Murray's first draft as a general manager. Dylan, A to F, and what was your opinion of the Tim Murray, well, of Tim Murray's draft?
I'm also going to go with an A. I think I was really happy with how it went. Sam Reinhart, also my favorite player in the draft, even though I was tasked with lobbying in favor of Sam Bennett all the time. Reinhart was the guy I wanted for us, and it's the guy we got. He should be a great player for us for a long time. Um, as Chris said, Tim Murray tried to make trades, and that was the one thing I was a little bit disappointed in that we didn't get to make any trades. But I'm not upset in the part that we kept the first pick of the second round and got Brendan Lemieux in that. He's got hockey in his genes, with his father being Claude Lemieux, four-time Stanley Cup champion. Great, not great, but he's a very good player throughout his career. Very good role player throughout his career. Was never truly the superstar, although I think he won. He might have won a Conn Smythe. Did he? I don't know. But he was very good. That's the main point. He's got the chip on his shoulder from being passed by every team at least once, or almost every team that had a first round pick. And I think in a couple of years he could be a very solid depth piece to our team and help us build towards winning a Stanley Cup. And overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I know there was tons of rumors about trades. Um, I'm glad Murray tried. There was a lot of rumors really leading up, like, oh, Tyler Myers is wanted by Vancouver and another team, but nothing ever materialized there, and I'm fine with keeping Myers. I know some people would love to see him gone, but overall, I think he made good moves. He's putting us in a situation to keep moving forward in the right direction with this rebuild, I think. So I'm really happy with how the draft went for us.
Yeah, I personally I give it an A plus. I believe that this draft was a slam dunk by Murray with what he had, a first and three second round picks. He traded down in the second round and still got his guy. The only qualm that he probably has is, I guess, late in the first round, like we just said, he tried to trade up. There was a guy that he wanted so bad that he tried to trade for that guy after he got drafted. He still was trying to pursue him from the team that took him. So it says how much he wanted that player, but you know I think this sucked for McDavid and things of that nature. It you can't mess up a top two pick. It is so rare to mess that up. And Sam Reinhart is going to be a good player, but I like Brendan Lemieux a lot. It'll kind of lead into my next question. I don't know if we'll go in more depth, but uh, Brendan Lemieux, like we all said, he's physical, he's tough. He's, to quote him, Chris quoted him, you know, one of the more fiery players in this year's draft, and they just added more fire. And that's something you want to hear. He says his father is his role model. His father was the most hated player in the NHL, and got some stats on his father: 370 goals, nearly 800 points, 150 points in the playoffs in 200, nearly 250 games. He was the Conn Smythe for 94-95, so did win a Conn Smythe, and he did win 4 Stanley Cups. He also had the most goals in the playoffs in a separate playoff run in which they did not win the cup. So if his son can perform in the playoffs like he did, we hit a gold mine early in the second round. Cornell, they say he's going to be a good winger. Um, so, I mean, a good center. and we'll see how that turns out. The third, the third second round pick, that Karabachek or whatever, we'll see what happens with him. European and first year over in America this past year, so see how that turns out. The goalie and the defenseman, I like our seventh round pick though. I believe his name is Victor Olsen, and I believe he had 45 points in the Swedish Hockey League, and we talked about this all throughout scouting, how these players had barely any points over in Sweden. Like they were getting like 12 and 8. In William Nylander's case, he might have had 7. And this kid, oh no, that wasn't the Swedish hockey. Well, it was juniors. In juniors, he had 53 points in 44 games. I don't remember any player that we reviewed putting up 53 points in their junior hockey league. So, for Europeans. So that's a big deal. I think that kid may actually turn out, which is pretty crazy for being a seventh round pick. And yeah, so um, who were your favorite guys? I know you guys kind of talked about Lemieux and Cornell, but were there any players when you looked that you really like? After looking them over and stuff, you were really happy with Murray picking them? Dylan, I'll let you go.
Oh, I haven't, to be completely honest, I haven't looked too much into the players that were taken in the later, like rounds 3 and later, but overall they seem mostly like really good additions. Reinhart Lemieux I already talked about, but Cornell, Karabachek from the QMJHL. We drafted a goalie in round 3, and I didn't expect us to draft a goalie necessarily, given our sort of depth at the position with Neuwirth and Enroth will battle, and then we still have Hackett, Lewin, and Olmark and Makarov down. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. The other guys, I don't know. I'm excited to see what these guys can do, and should be interesting because we're going to have a lot of guys who will earn opportunities to make our team going forward, given how a vast majority of our roster is very young. So maybe we got a couple steals, or maybe we're just going to go as expected with Reinhart, Lemieux, and then these guys will serve as AHL, NHL depth guys, and hoping for the best.
Yeah, with Tim Murray's track record of being a good drafter, one would I think these players might turn out to be pretty good picks. Chris, were there any players that stood out to you after the draft that we picked that you liked?
I'm in the same boat as Dylan actually. After the third round, I pretty much didn't really pay much attention. Um, if I wasn't at work that day, I probably would have ended up looking at all the players. But um, I like that Cornell guy. That seventh round pick, the way you talked about him, if he turns out, that guy will probably end up being a ridiculous steal. Um, obviously Reinhart Lemieux, but yeah, right now I guess my favorite between the wow, besides those two would be maybe that seventh rounder that you talked about, Andy. But other than that, I didn't really look too much into the guys. Uh, Probably should do that.
Yeah, it seventh round picks. I did research, and the seventh round picks have like a 10% chance of making the NHL, if that. So, if you hit on one, it's a steal. Even if they play one game, it's a steal. If they make it over to America, that's a steal. So it would be ridiculous. There were a couple surprises in the first round. In my opinion, Hayden Fleury going, I believe, at 6 or 7 to Carolina was a big surprise to me. I did not expect him to be that high, and you know, uh, Joshua Hosang went 28th. I'm surprised the Islanders traded up to get him. D'Angelo, he went to Dallas. I think he went at like 16. I think that was higher than everyone thought he was going to go. I don't believe a European defense. Oh no, Peterson went late. You know what? A lot of the Europeans that we didn't have picked, like Fiala and stuff, they got drafted really early. I think we made a couple swings and misses, but this draft was definitely a lot better than our mock draft for the NFL. And my bad, Honka went to Dallas. I don't really remember where D'Angelo went. I know D'Angelo went somewhere, obviously. So I don't know exactly where it probably was, but Tampa. As I'm getting tidbits in the chat, with their first pick. So I don't know. I think Hayden Fleury was a surprise to me. I was surprised Demko. You know, he was a late first round pick at first, and then everyone kind of moved him up into the middle of the first round, thinking that maybe Minnesota or Philly or Dylan was thinking about taking him with San Jose. People were kind of like, hey, maybe Demko will go here. But Demko ended up being the second goalie taken in the draft, so that was kind of odd to me. So I don't know. Those are kind of my surprises. Nothing else really surprised me too much. Chris, did you have any surprises in the first round?
Surprises? Yeah. Obviously, Hayden Fleury going that early was just really weird. If not, he shouldn't have been a sixth pick. He could end up being a pretty decent two-way defender, but his game lacks a lot of uh, qualities that would make him a pick above guys who went after him. I think like Richie and Nylander and all those guys, a couple other guys like that went after him. And I think Carolina was pretty stupid there. Although Carolina doesn't really have a defenseman. Like, I don't know who all their defensemen are, but I don't think they have anyone really big. So they could have been taking a shot in the dark there. I was surprised that the Capitals didn't go for a defenseman in the draft, but they ended up doing some stuff towards that for free agency, but that's for later. And I was surprised that Julius Honka got taken at 14 by Dallas. I was expecting a couple other defensemen to go in front of him, including D'Angelo. But if Honka ends up working out, then they've got themselves one of the best offensive defensemen in that draft. Obviously, arguably the best. And then, Josh Hosang, like you talked about, the dude's got like top tier talent, but all of his issues dropped him really far in the draft. So if he wasn't a dickhead all the time, then he could have been a top 5, at least top like 7 pick. So if that dude's not an asshole and he's got himself landed on a team that, although I don't know, it's kind of stupid. Kind of stupid. Islanders are obviously trying to make it so the Sabres don't have a high pick next year, but I mean, Josh Osang's not going to make a difference next year. So um, I was disappointed that the Sabres weren't able to trade for Nikita Sherbak. That would be cool. Or trade up to where Nikita Sherbak was taken. I wonder if Andy talked about who, or Tim Murray was trying to trade for someone. I wonder if that was who. If not, it was someone else, obviously. So, who knows?
Yeah. I wish we did know who he was trying to trade for. It definitely raised some eyebrows. Um, Dylan, what did you find as surprises in the first round?
Well, mine are going to be pretty consistent with your guys'. I wasn't surprised by any of the top six. We got the first six picks of our mock draft right, and that's twice as good as we did in football. So I guess we did a little bit better there. I was surprised by Hayden Fleury at 7 to Carolina, especially with Nylander, Nikolai Ehlers, Nick Ritchie, and players like that right behind, going in the 3 picks right behind. I didn't scout for Carolina, so I don't know what if maybe defense is something that they should have taken or not. Dallas is one of my teams, and I did consider Julius Honka there, but I personally wasn't a big Honka fan, and therefore I didn't take him. Not surprised that Dallas did end up going defense, though. Um, I do. I like the gambles by Tampa Bay and the Islanders on Hosang and D'Angelo, other way around, respectively. But I mean, if these players end up working out, then that's really good for them. We know the Islanders are in a spot where they need to start doing well. I don't know. Hosang was supposed to be one of the more talented offensively and out of the entire draft, but the off the ice issues sort of knocked him down. I would be very surprised if he played in the NHL or saw any NHL at the time this year. And in terms of D'Angelo, if he can get his stuff off the ice straight, then Tampa Bay's got another really good young player, or they could have another really good young player on their team. Insert him into that roster that already has Stamkos, Palat Johnson, Jonathan Drouin will be up soon, Victor Hedman, Ben Bishop, and they could be a really good team going forward for a decent amount of time if some of these moves pan out. So it's interesting with some of these. There aren't many that I really like completely disagree. Um, I do agree the Fleury one's a little bit questionable, but the rest I see why the team would go in that direction. And I, just one final thing, I was kind of surprised that the goalie Thatcher Demko slipped out of the first round. I think most people had him going in the first round just by virtue of him being usually in most people's rankings the number 1 goalie. So they thought somebody would reach on him. He ended up going to Vancouver, I believe. And that could, for a team that's Vancouver's in a tough spot, transitioning, shouldn't quite be in a rebuild because they still have the Sedins, and I don't want to get too much in the next topic, but they signed Ryan Miller, and so they're in a good position, a decent position for now, but they also want to look to the future. So Demko could be the guy for the future once Miller is gone. Assuming that Markstrom or Eddie Lack don't work out, because they still got those guys too. But my surprises were, for the most part, on pace with yours.
Yeah, we had a good we had a good mock. And goalie dropped out and Fleury went too early, and that's like it was pretty consistent in terms of what kind of players these teams ended up wanting. Um, I guess my next question kind of is, isn't about the draft necessarily, but our second overall pick, Sam Reinhart. I know I have a different viewpoint than Chris does, I believe, but how long before we see Samson Reinhart? And do you think that he will be up here all year long, or do you think it will be a 9-game stint sent back down? What do you think is going to be the 2014-15 season for Sam Reinhart? Chris, I'll let you go first.
Honestly, I would prefer that I would like to see him do a stint, like you said, a 9-game. I don't know what 9 games. It's an odd number. I like odd numbers. The 10-game. It's even. Even.
Well, 9 games is the limit they can play before it counts against their contract.
Oh, that's stupid. Okay, so 9 games in. And then see him sent back down because I think I don't know, just throwing him onto the worst team in the NHL last season could stunt his growth into the player that could end up being one of the better playmakers in the league. But I don't know. He might end up. I think he's going to end up staying on the team the whole year. But I would prefer that he stays down one more year and then comes up next year. And then whether he goes on the AHL roster or NHL roster is different. That's a story for next year. But yeah, I prefer him see him sent down this year and let him grow. And then I would expect him to absolutely dominate that league. I would expect way more than 104 points. So.
In Kootenai, yeah, I want him up here. I want him up here all year long, and it's. I feel like you could stunt his growth, but how many top 2 picks don't play right away? It's like you usually don't. I don't know. Like if he's not developed, I wouldn't pick him at number 2. I guess. Like our team needs center. Well, it doesn't even need center, but he's such an impact player. He may be our number 1 center right away. And I know Hodgson makes $4.5 million now, and Ennis is going to probably make 4.5 also. But I almost could see Reinhardt being our top line center right away. And I don't know. I don't know. He's going to be a very good player for us. And our team is really young, so I don't know. Maybe the added year will add some chemistry. Maybe he can develop some chemistry with guys like Gergensons and Bellino and players like that, Ennis and Hodgson, and maybe if Bristol-Linen's up here. And it'll be an experience for him to help us in the long run. Maybe he develops leadership with the team. Brian Gianta, that's a thing for another time. I know Dylan kind of shed light on Ryan Miller, but we'll talk about Brian Gianta later. But that's a thing too. So, Dylan, where do you want Sam Reinhart to be next year?
In my opinion, I'd like to see him in the NHL next year. I mean, if they send him back down to juniors, I'm not going to be mad, but I'd prefer they keep him up. I'm sure they'll do whatever they think's best, and I'm sure he'll get at least the like 9 or whatever games in the NHL prior to the decision. I think personally, I think that. But I mean, as Andy said, we are a young team. He was a second overall pick, so I imagine we anticipate that he's at least somewhat ready, and I think we might as well bring him up. People are afraid of doing this because of Mikhail Grigorenko's situation right now, and some people like Andy are just ready to give up on his career. But I think it could be a different case. I think Reinhart could come up and be successful. We're a young team. We don't expect to be anything that great next year, so we don't need him to come. We don't need him to come in and be our top line center. If he can, that's whatever. But we're not going to bring him up and give him no time like what happened with Grigorenko when we brought him up and he got 10 minutes a game. We can bring up Reinhart, give him a good amount of ice time, but not rely on him and put him in the pressure situation of being our best player immediately, because most of us still anticipate being the worst team in the league or one of the worst. So I think it could help him if we bring him up. He gets a year to play with us in somewhat of a low pressure situation while getting acclimated to the speed of the NHL game, the strength, how things go, and he can learn from some of our veterans and some of our young guys too who have gone through coming into the NHL at a young age not too long ago. So I'd like him to be in the NHL, but I understand if he isn't this year.
I don't know. I think he's going to be an impact player, and I agree. I don't think we're going to do that well, but I don't think we're going to be last. I know I got into an argument with Matt about it, but I don't think they're going to be the worst team. I don't think they're going to be the second worst team, but that's the thing. So that's the NHL draft coverage that we will pursue and break down. If you have anything that you wanted us to talk about that we please. Uh, Actually, you know what? One last thing. It's not necessarily the draft, but what is your opinion on the Kessler trade? Um, I guess you know what? We'll take the Kessler and Spezza trade and we'll put them together for a second. Chris, which surprised you more, Kessler to Anaheim or Spezza to Dallas? And which one do you think will be a better fit?
Um, I think the Spezza to Dallas surprised me more because I don't know. Dallas needs some good forwards. They've got Sagan and Ben, but that's about it. And they've got a couple decent prospects, but no one that's going to be huge. So bringing in Spezza, gives them that now player. Obviously, he's not in his prime anymore, but he's still good enough to where he can make a difference. And that's a good move for Dallas. Is he going to work out there? I don't know. Sagan is their center, I do believe. Or is it Ben? I think Sagan's the center. And Sagan, I don't know how good of a center he is, so Sagan might actually get flopped to wing. So that would leave Spezza at center and Sagan and Ben on wing, and that would be a pretty nasty first line. And you could see that, or at least that on a power play. But for Anaheim, the Kessler trade makes even more sense because Anaheim's got Getzlaf and Perry, and then they've got a bunch of prospects. They're ranked in like the top 5 of all the prospects right now. So Sean would really love to hear me saying this. So bringing in Kessler to anchor that second line, if they want to put up some prospects up on that second line, they've got a great centerman like Kessler there, who's one of the best centermen in the league face-off wise, and he's going to bring some leadership to that team, and as well as obviously Getzlaff brings some leadership as well. So, goodness, I don't know. I think the one that they both make a lot of sense to me, but I think the Spezza trade is going to work out the most. They're both going to work. I think so. But I think because Dallas was somehow a playoff team. They don't have a good team, Dallas. But somehow they made the playoffs this year on the backs of Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin. So adding Spezza to the mix, maybe they make it even further. Maybe not. Who knows? I think I'm going to go with the Dallas one here.
Um, yeah, I don't the Kessler deal. I I think Anaheim. All those teams. I read something today. They're like the power rankings. 7 of the top 8 teams in the power rankings were from the Western Conference, and now it's almost like the top 8 teams are in the Western Conference in the league. Like Anaheim didn't make it to the conference finals, and like you have LA, Chicago, Anaheim, Minnesota now, but that's for a minute for now. And geez, I just lost track. But you got those teams. St. Louis, another team. But you got those teams up there, and Anaheim gets Ryan Kessler, a great two-way forward, shutdown guy. They're gonna play LA, and they're gonna put him against Kopitar, and Kopitar's lines can get shut down. And it's like, well, he's gonna put him up against Kane, shut down Kane, and it's Anaheim all of a sudden has 2 solid lines, more than they ever have before. It's definitely nice to see. Spezza to Dallas kind of caught me off guard. That will really help them depth wise because guys like Ray Whitney won't get you very far. So um, that really helped them. Second line center, and they Ruff may have more centers now. He may have a better team now than he's had since 2007 with the Buffalo Sabres. So that's the thing. Um, I know we have comments. Dylan, are you reading the comments?
Yeah. Um,
Uh, can you enlighten us?
okay, well, Matt, if you remember way back in episode 1, has been commenting mostly about the draft stuff. And going back, a lot of it's about Reinhardt, and he said of the past 10 years, the worst players to go in the top 2 in the past 10 years are Eric Johnson and Jordan Stahl, who they aren't terrible, not necessarily, obviously not playing up to top 2 standards, but he said he likes the chances of Reinhardt doing well. So, and then Andy's guy, Victor Olofsson, Matt could see him turning into a Carl Hagelin-esque player. Hagelin himself was a 6th-round pick. There are similar numbers in the J20 Super Elite level in Sweden, where Olofsson had .03 less points per game. So they're both fast. They play similar styles. It could work out well, and he expects that Reinhardt will stay in the NHL with us moving forward, and he thinks that they could move Cody Hodgson to the wing. Which that does, Cody Hodgson to the wing would make sense going forward, I think.
Yeah, he's bad at faceoffs if I remember correctly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I agree with all of that. I like the Carl Hagelin comparison because now it solidifies, well, not solidifies, but helps Ole Rolfson's case for possibly becoming an NHL player. Dylan, I guess now you can give your oh my God, what were we just? What were we just?
The
Oh,
Spezza and
Spezza.
Kessler trades.
Oh my God, I forgot what we were talking about. What is your opinion of those two trades, and which one caught you off guard more, and which one made more sense to you?
I was I wasn't I can't say I was surprised by Kessler going to Anaheim. Um, it seemed like leading up to the trade it was either like Anaheim or Chicago were getting Kessler, and so 50% chance isn't much to warrant a big surprise. I think he's a good addition to the Ducks, should provide solid depth. Uh, he's a great player. He won't be relied on to be the number one guy like he was in Vancouver some of the times when the Sedins battled injuries, and last year they struggled a little bit for a while. So a little bit less pressure. He'll be able to step in, play his game, and help, I think, really help out the Ducks this year, because it's looking like it's gonna be tough to beat Chicago or LA. So Anaheim probably felt that they had to make a big move to help to make them content, because regular season Anaheim is fine, but to beat one of those two teams in the playoffs, I think a big move was something they felt they had to do, and Kessler could be that move that gives them the chance to take down one of those top two. It's a very competitive conference, but I think especially those Chicago and LA are especially tough. Wouldn't be surprised to see either of them back in the Cup next year, to be completely honest. Possibly hoisting it. But different story. Spezza trade. I heard Dallas was interested, but I never really looked too much into it. I know Nashville tried to get Spezza, but he nixed that with his no trade clause. I think it would have been great for him to go to Nashville personally. He could be the person to get James Neal the puck, because I don't think James Neal can do that much on his own, to be completely honest. But to Dallas, I like Dallas. I got my boys Ben Sagan, Goligoski, and Lettinen. Ben and Sagan will remain on line one most likely. I think. We had a comment from Matt. Don't forget Valeri Nichushkin. I think he'll probably be on line one, if not line two of that team. They did get rid of Alex Chiasson in the Spezza trade. So Spezza will be, I think, line two center. They signed Oleszewski, who played in Ottawa from the deadline to the end of the season, and I believe he did pretty well for them, playing alongside Jason Spezza and Milan Michalek. So if those two can maintain a little bit of chemistry, they can provide good depth for Lindy Ruff and the Dallas Stars going forward, and I think they'll definitely I can't say definitely. I should not say definitely, but I think they'll have a very good chance at being a playoff team this year, and I think Spezza will be glad to have a fresh start in somewhere other than Ottawa. It seemed like he was ready for the change. Obviously, he asked for it, so he's ready to move on, and I think he'll do well in Dallas. I think they're both good moves, to be completely honest. And we'll see going forward. If I had to say something like who, I don't know if that's quite the return that Ottawa was hoping for. They did get Alex Chiasson, a good player, 2 prospects, and a second-round pick. So they weren't able to get a first-round pick in return for Spezza. When they wanted their number 10 pick back from the Ducks, and that's why the Ducks ended up taking Kessler instead, because they were able to trade the 24th. So Senators tried to get the number 10 pick. They wouldn't take the 24th, and they ended up without a first-round pick in return. So it should be interesting to see how it helps them or how it hurts them going forward.
Yeah, it definitely has its storylines this season with Kessler and Spezza moving. You did reference Nashville and James Neal. The only reason I kind of didn't say anything about James Neal in this was Nashville's trash. Like they have Shea Weber. It's weird. Their team, they say it's going to be a playoff contender still, but it looks so bad. So I don't know. Next, we're going to talk about free agency and what the Sabres did. They signed Brian Gianta, Andre Mazzaros. Um, they traded for Josh Georges. They re-signed Marcus Foligno, and they pulled the razzle dazzle on Minnesota and took Molson and McCormick back after they leased them to them. Essentially, if there was any time to call a trade a rental trade, that is it. As we got McCormick and Molson in return. We got Molson at a very good price, in my opinion, for $5 million over 5 years in a class that isn't very deep. He was probably a top five forward, and $5 million is pretty good, seeing as people are giving guys like Mikhail Grabowski $5 million. Actually, he got the same. Grabowski got the same amount of money as Molson. So I guess that leads into something else. But Chris, I'll let you go first. What's your opinion on these moves? Which one do you like most? Are you puzzled by any? Your thoughts?
Um, I guess it like honestly, if I was gonna give a grade to this, I would say B plus to an A minus, maybe even an A. These moves are gonna help us. Josh George's. Well, I'll start with Brian Gianta since that was our first signing. Brian Gianta, he's what 34 years old, I think. Yes. Yeah. So he's close to 34 years old, somewhere around there. He's won a few Stanley Cups. He was the captain of the Montreal Canadiens, and he wasn't the captain just because they were like, "Yeah, you're the oldest dude on the team. Here, take it." Even because he wasn't the oldest dude on the team, he was their captain for a reason. Pretty much is what I'm saying. He was originally from Rochester, and he said in an interview that this was his team growing up. This is a team he watched, and it was he said it was an absolute privilege to be able to put the jersey on. I think he chose number 12, which is cool. He's not going to bring a lot of points to our team. It should be okay. But mostly he's just here to bring leadership and veteran knowledge to our younger players, and that's exactly what we need in this situation where we are in the middle of a rebuild. We need those players who can be leaders and show our new players exactly what they got to do. Next, we traded for Josh Georges. Originally, we were on his no trade clause. Toronto was trying to trade for Josh Georges, but Toronto wasn't able to get him because they were on Josh Georges no trade clause. And then all of a sudden, the Canadians called up Tim Murray and they were like, "Hey, are you interested in Josh Georges? Would you be willing to trade for him?" And Tim Murray was like, "Of course I'm interested, but it doesn't matter because we're on his no trade clause." And then they're like, "Well, you're no longer on his no trade clause. He added your team to teams he'd be willing to go to." And Tim Murray was like, "Right there, yes, let's do it." He said that that's all he needed to know was that Josh Georges went, talked to his GM, and said, "Hey, put Buffalo on a team that I'd be willing to go to." That just shows that he wants to be here. Tim Murray said he wasn't sure if it was because he talked to Gianta or what, but something like that um, speaks a thousand words in the matter of minutes, and they got it done real quickly. We gave up a second round pick, but second round picks, you're getting a player of Josh George's who's not anything special, but he's a solid defensive defenseman, and he's gonna he's a pretty good second line, second grouping guy, maybe third with all of our young prospects. So, and then we signed Andre Mazzaros to a 1 year deal. Pretty much, Tim Murray went up to him and said, "Hey, you used to be a good player, and you can come to this team, and maybe you can end up being that same player again." And then he said that we're either gonna we're gonna go forward with this guy, or we're gonna trade him for to a contending team next season. So we signed him to a 1 year deal. Either he works out or we trade him. So that's not a big deal. Um, we bring some decent veteranship there. What else? Matty Molson. Matty Molson. So glad we got him back. He was Tim Murray called him pretty much right away, and Matty was like, thank you for calling me. I had a bunch of other teams calling me apparently, and he said that he was waiting for Tim to call because we were number one on his list. He wanted to be here, and I just read a tweet sent out by Matt Molson a while when he got signed. He was like so proud to be in a city where they're really building something great, and that's fantastic. Like if we can bring in a player like Matt Molson, sure, some people say he benefited from having John Tavares, but he didn't do terrible on our team last year. So he's going to come in, be a top line forward. In a couple years, he'll probably be a top six. Um, and Matt Molson was a great pickup. I'm so excited to have him. That's probably my favorite one, although it's close to Gianta. The Cody McCormick one, obviously, he's a good penalty killer, and he's a pretty good like grinder, enforcer kind of player. He's going to play that fourth line, and he's going to get some penalty kill minutes, and he's just going to he should be pretty good next year. I know he did pretty well from the Wild, but obviously he wanted to come back here, so all good news for us.
They want to come here. They want to come to the team that is on paper not very good, but they believe that this team will be something. And that is great to hear, great to see them say, and it's something. A former player said, driving from the airport to the arena, it is the ugliest city in the NHL. But after playing here, it is one of the nicest cities to play in the whole entire league. And that's the thing. Not many players realize outside of Buffalo how nice the area is. And you notice all these local guys come back and play. There are some players that live in the area that never played for Buffalo. That just heard it was a great area to raise a family. They came back over here and they were like, wow, this is a place where I want to raise my family. So it's really nice to see Molson want to come back, McCormick come back. Gianta said he wanted to raise his family here. He said he wanted to be immersed in the Buffalo lifestyle again, and he's got a young family too, so that's important. Dylan, what are your feelings on all these moves that the Sabres made?
I was very happy with the way our first day of free agency went for the Buffalo Sabres. I think we made some good signings. things that will help us move forward. Very impressed with what Tim Murray's done this offseason and what he did at the deadline too. I'm glad I was always a supporter of Darcy Regier, but I knew that time to come, and I think we got a fantastic replacement for him, and hopefully he can be around for a long time now, and we'll be a great team. But specifically, I'll start with Gianta. The rumors started to come out like the day before. At least that's when I first started hearing them, that he wanted to come here. And then the morning of, I heard that he turned down an offer from Montreal, and we both, there was mutual interest, and I'm glad we got him. He's a good veteran guy. We let a lot of players go, and you need veterans, and Gianta's a guy. He can come in, play with these young guys, show them how to play the game, how to do it the right way. He's been doing it his whole career. He's found a lot of success at it. As Chris mentioned, he won a Stanley Cup. I didn't know this until I looked it up, but in 05-06 he had an 89-point season. So he's been really good, and he can be a good role model for our players going forward. And I really like the signing, and I think there's a chance that we give him the C this year. I know a couple days ago I was starting to consider the idea that we go captainless, but Gianta's here. He's here for 3 years. Maybe it's something that's definitely worth considering. He's obviously had it in Montreal, and Chris said he had it for a reason. So I like that signing. Andre Mazzaros, he's a solid defenseman. He's not quite what he used to be. He was a near 40-point defenseman back when he was with Ottawa, and he's sort of tailed off, but he's still very solid. He had a couple of good years in Philly in the recent past, and he can come to Buffalo, show us what he can do, and maybe we hang on to him to be a veteran presence on the blue line. We got a lot of young defensemen too, and we lost the veteran presence in Ehrhoff. Or maybe we just keep him around, and at the deadline we thank him for his time and send him off to go be in the playoffs for some draft picks or something. I don't know. So I do like that pick. But I'm leading up to we re-signed Foligno, British contract, 2 years. That's great. What's his face? Cody McCormick. He'll be a good bottom six forward. He's gonna come in, be the role player he was last time we had him, and you have to have some of those guys on your team. So whether you like him or not, he's here. And I saved Matt Molson for last because he's also my favorite. He's 5 years, $5 million a year. I said that at one point. I don't know if it's like on record on the show or something, but at one point when we had him, I said, let's give him 5 years, $5 million a year to keep him here. Nobody's ever going to believe me, but that's fine. I think he's a great signing, though. He's going to come in. He wants to be here, and that's the best part to me. We usually think of Buffalo like oh, it's Buffalo, New York. It's not an attractive free agent destination. But if you look at it this year, Matt Molson, he didn't even spend half a season here, and he knew he wanted to come back. Brian Gianta, he grew up in Rochester, so he's from the Western New York area. He wanted to come here, and he probably could have gotten a contract from a team that's going to contend for the Stanley Cup if he wanted to, and been a big piece of that going forward. But he wanted to come here. He wanted to help us out. They hear about the area from other players. They see what we have going forward, and I'm getting the feeling it's not just us, the fans, who are excited to see the Buffalo Sabres in a couple of years. There's players around the league who are like, they're in a really good position, and Darcy Regier and Tim Murray are ensuring we're in a good position, and well, Darcy Regier did when he was here. Tim Murray is ensuring that we remain in a good position going forward, and I think he did that without compromising the rebuild, and I'm excited to see what we do going forward. We may be last this year, we may not. We'll be a lottery team, and someday someday we should be really good. And before I end, there's one more comment from Matt. He said Chris pointed out that Matt Molson benefited from having John Tavares play with him, and Matt has commented Sam Reinhart is the new John Tavares for Matt Molson. So we could see maybe someday he comes in and maybe he'll provide to us what I don't want to say maybe he'll provide to us what John Tavares is to the Islanders, because the Islanders are still really bad and Tavares is their one good player. But a similar, maybe he'll be everything we hoped for, and Molson can help him get there.
Some people do say Reinhardt is the best player to come out in the draft in the last 10 years. So that would include that does include Sidney Crosby. I feel like that person made a mistake, but you know, if
Maybe
he
not
is
best offensive.
yeah, maybe best all around. Which, you know, we get John Tavares and a Sam Reinhart. That's to really, really, that's a big steal. Uh, Chris, to your comment in the chat, um, this pick is going to take more than 3 first-round picks to get. As hard as that may be to believe. So, my opinion, Mazzaro's, Chris described it exactly right. You know, he's kind of like Talender. We'll have him, he'll play, and if somebody wants him at the deadline, we'll give him to him. He'll provide a little bit of veteran presence on the blue line, and it'll help with the development of Bristow and Zadorov and guys of that nature. I looked, we only still have 5 NHL defensemen, in my opinion, so it's a thing that we may need to fix. That'll lead into my next thing. But Gianta, future captain, I think that's incredible that he chose to come here. I know he grew up around here, and I mentioned it already, but you know, everyone jokes, well, you gave Craig Rivet it right away, you gave Steve Ott it right away. Those guys were never captains. And frankly, they may not have deserved that, in my opinion. But Brian Gianta has been a captain. He was a captain of a team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. He's won a Stanley Cup. He is in the complete right to have a C on his jersey right away. He provides a leadership that no other player on the team can provide right now. You know, getting Molson back, I already kind of talked about it. That's a great signing for us. Thank God. I saw when it said Tim Murray is not interested in Steve Ott. I was like, ha, we won't have to deal with, oh, we should make Ott captain again. Why Gianta? Gianta sucks. He had 45 points. I think Devontae Smith Pelly had less. So that's all I need to say to that. But so we did well. We did well. There's still moves to be made. We have to still re-sign Ennis. We still have to figure out if we're going to do anything with Ruido. Matt Hackett isn't signed. So that's a thing, too. Gotta keep in mind. I guess that leads into my next question. What else do you want Tim Murray to do with free agency in the upcoming few weeks? What kind of what does his team still need before the season starts? Dylan, you can go first.
To be completely honest, I don't think we need a whole lot more. The thing about being expecting to be a lottery team is that you don't need to fill every hole immediately. And that's the rebuild's not going to happen at the snap of a finger. So I think we're done with any big signings. A lot of the top names have already gone places anyway, but maybe we bring in like a third line forward or a lower pairing defenseman or something and re-sign the guys that we still have to re-sign, because such as Ennis and maybe I would hope we would keep Ruido. I think he's been very good very reliable since we brought him on. And so I don't want to say we're done, but I don't think we're going to do much more. We're just going to shore up things a little bit. Maybe a couple re-signings, maybe an extension, and really figure out things for this year. I'm sure Nolan and Murray have had it in their minds of which players they want up and down this year, and if they want to keep a lot of the younger guys down, maybe we do have to sign a couple more. But if they want to bring up a couple of guys, like if they want Reinhardt up, if they want Grigorenko up, if they want Rasmus Ristolainen and Mark Pysyk up, then our roster is, for the most part, pretty full or nearing it. So nothing too spectacular left to do, just a couple depth things to make sure we get done prior to the season.
Yeah, depth guys for sure. I think maybe a third pair defenseman, something of that nature. Maybe a third line forward. Nothing major. Um, Chris, what do you think Tim Murray still has to get done?
I think he needs to release Matt Hackett. Dude's an absolute bust. He's shitty. He can't play in the NHL. He showed last year that he can get shown up by goalies who weren't expected to be much. Nathan Lewin took the starting job away from him in the AHL, and then they both got called up. Neither of them looked spectacular, but I mean they were thrown to the wolves pretty much in the worst team. But I watched Nathan Lewin, and Nathan Lewin actually worked. He was pretty good, but Matt Hackett was garbage. So he needs to go. Other than that, obviously sign Ennis. Someone mentioned extensions for maybe a couple players, but other than that, bottom pairing defenseman, yeah, like you said. But I think re-sign Ruido. We could probably bring Pysyk up. Ristolainen, I think, needs to get a little bit more physical. I don't know if he'll be up next year. He probably will end up being up. So I don't know how much we really need another defenseman. Yeah, then maybe like a third line forward or something like that. I was really excited to hear John Scott wasn't on the team anymore. I didn't hear about like what happened to him at all, but he signed with who did he sign with, Dallas or something?
San Jose.
San Jose, that's fantastic. We don't play at San Jose very often, so we're not going to have to deal with the giant teddy bear. So, yeah, that should be good. San Jose is in for a rude awakening when they realize that the dude can't fight for shit. He just kind of stands there. It's just like, hi, I'm tall. And, yeah, that's about it.
Can you tell he doesn't like John Scott?
What? No, I love him.
Sean would be crying. He'd be so mad. We need John Scott. We need Patrick Coletta. We need Steve. Osha. We need Cody McCormick. Um, so yeah, that's our free agency. I guess the last thing is the rest of free agency. Um, I guess I'll sum it up like this. What was your favorite couple of signings, and which signings kind of made you scratch your head and be like, that guy got that much, or that why'd they sign him? Uh, Dylan, I'll let you go first.
All right, so in terms of non-Sabres free agency, um, I think there's certain ones that make sense to me, like Dan Boyle going to the Rangers. That's been long rumored. Vanek went to Minnesota. Ryan Miller went to Vancouver, as I mentioned. Ryan Miller got like 3 years, I believe, about $6 million per. So I think he's worth it, to be completely honest. Some people don't. After that playoff performance, some people don't. But I think he'll be solid in Vancouver. He's finally on a West Coast team like he's been hoping for. This is one of my favorite non-Sabre signings. Brad Richards to the Chicago Blackhawks. It's only 1 year, $2 million. Obviously, they have John Taves as their number one center, but if you put Brad Richards on line two with Pat Kane and Brandon Saad, he's well worth $2 million. I know he's not what he used to be, and we shouldn't expect those kind of numbers, but if you're playing with Kane and Saad, you're going to put up numbers. He's going to be great for them. In my opinion, I think he will be. And I'm sorry to the rest of the teams in the league, but Chicago got better. So they got better without having to trade Brandon Saad or Toivo Teravainen to get Ryan Kessler, like was rumored or whatever. So I really liked that that signing for them. And in terms of overpaying, I don't know. There was a couple. I think Dave Bolin might have got overpaid. I don't know the exact number, but he got quite a bit in signing 5.5 for Bolin, signing with the Florida Panthers. He's not a bad player, but would I give him $5.5 million for however long? Probably not. I know I briefly discussed this one with Andy, but Christian Ehrhoff only 1 year for $4 million. I think it's a good signing for Pittsburgh. He's gonna play with two of the best players in the world, in Crosby and Malkin. If Chris Letang is healthy, then he might be paired with Letang, and if not, they still have Martin. I know they lost Niskanen, so they've still got a couple guys there. But he should be in line for a solid year. His numbers could return to closer to what they were back when he was like a 40 to 50 point defenseman in Vancouver. Keep an eye on him in fantasy hockey, but he's probably just he. The most surprising part to me was the 1 year, because it makes sense in that he might go there. He's going to play with the best players in the world, put up great stats, and then maybe next offseason he'll get an even bigger, longer, more money contract. But every rumor I had heard had said that he wanted 5 years or more. So that was a little bit surprising. I'm not, to be completely honest, I'm not that upset he's gone. He was our best. He was probably one of our best players, to be completely honest. But if he didn't want to be here, then, frankly, I don't want him here either. So we brought in a bunch of players that do want to be here, so that's fine. Wish him the best of luck in Pittsburgh, and I'm sure he'll get his big money contract next year. But those were mostly my general impressions of around the league free agency this year.
Yeah, I like the Brad Richards one after you mentioned it. I really like the Brooks Orpik one. Um, I know the money is Matt doesn't agree with the money, but Orpik and Niskanen going to Washington. Washington's biggest problem is them playing good defensive hockey, and Orpik helps them tremendously. And that's the players they are missing from becoming a team that kind of just makes the playoffs borderline to, a conference contending team, in my opinion, if they can get their goalie situation straightened out. Um, I really, really like Paul Stastny going to St. Louis. God, St. Louis went from a 10 to an 11 out of 10. Like, if only they didn't have Brian Elliott in net. Like, they should have, they had to choose between Ryan Miller and Paul Stastny, essentially. But if Jake Allen plays decent, this team is scary good. Like, it is so solid. It was already only allowing 10, 15 shots a night. Now you got Paul Stastny on your second line. There, well, go score 3 goals a night and allow 15 shots. You could have a Anders Limbach in net and you'd still win.
You
So,
mean we shouldn't expect the St. Louis pick to be the McDavid one next year?
no, no. That pick is
Damn.
um, well, it's a good pick, but it's not going to be a lottery pick. Um, Dave Bolin got way overpaid. I think Florida did that because they want to get to the cap floor. Talon also likes him, so that's the thing. Grabowski, I already mentioned, he got really overpaid. He got $5 million a year with the Islanders to be their second line center, I believe. So, you know, maybe with guys like Michael Dale Cole and John Tavares, he'll get better. But he was just with Backstrom and Ovechkin, so you can't get much better situation than that. There's only a handful of better situations, so I don't think it's going to be much better. Miller had limited options. Uh, Hiller went to Calgary. That was kind of interesting to me. Nabokov went to Tampa. You know, Vanek going to Minnesota, that's a big deal. Minnesota went from a team, I know Matt's mentioned this, they have a sick top nine, I think. Like, when you look at it, if it can pan out and their young players perform the way they're supposed to, that top nine is dirty. And if it was in the East, it'd probably win the conference. But it's not. So it won't. And that's too bad. Um, so yeah. Chris, what signings did you like and what signings did you not like?
Just kind of looking at them here. Um, I like the Steve Downey one for Pittsburgh. That's a pretty decent one. Mikhail Grabowski got way overpaid. Um, I think Washington had a pretty good free agency. They picked up Niskanen and Orpik, like you said. Brooks Orpik got like 5.5 year. and he's a pretty solid defenseman. He, he's not anything like offensively talented, but he's a good defenseman who's going to shut down people pretty well. Matt Niskanen, obviously, he benefited from being um, on the Penguins, but honestly, even when Chris Letang was out, Matt Niskanen rarely faced the opposing team's top line. Like I read a stat somewhere. It was like somewhere like 18% of the time Matt Niskanen was out there. That was when the top line was out there. So that means 82% of the time Matt Niskanen was out there, it wasn't against the other team's top players. So obviously Pittsburgh didn't trust the guy to be able to defend against any top players. And if you're going to pay a guy like Niskanen more than you're going to pay like Orpik, then you're doing something wrong there. Um, Matt Niskanen is a decent defenseman. He's going to get you some okay points. I know that from experience in NHL fantasy, but he's not going to be anything huge, and I think they overpaid him a lot. Obviously, in free agency, you're going to have to overpay in order to get the guys to come to your team, but I think that was pretty stupid. I like the Jerome McGinley to the Colorado Avalanche. That was a good signing by Colorado. McGinley's still got some juice left in the tank, so that could end up being really good for him. He played for Boston. Obviously, he played for Boston last year. He did okay, but Boston's got a lot of people there. So, I don't know. I like to see that Ryan Miller got on the West Coast. I always liked Ryan. I'm really happy to see that Jonas Hitler. Oops. Oh wow, Jonas Hitler. Oh, Sean, don't listen to that one. Okay, so Jonas Hiller is now on a shitty team in Calgary. For some reason, Sean always loved Jonas Hiller. I'm gonna give a little secret here. Jonas Hiller was actually Sean's desktop background for the longest time. Like he opened it up and I saw it and I was like, what is that doing on there? And he was like, oh, it's Jonas Hiller. And I'm Ducks, man. Go Ducks. And I was just like, you're an idiot. Couldn't have like Getzlaff on there or Perry. You have to choose Hiller. Yeah, so I'm glad to see he's on a shitty team. He's going to be their starting goaltender going forward, and he's going to do really bad because he's not a good goaltender. I don't know. Alesh Hemsky, I like that pickup for Dallas. Dan Boyle, the Rangers, you always know that's coming. UC Jokinen got paid less than Dave Bolin. And UC Jokinen, obviously he benefited from being on the Pittsburgh Penguins, but I don't know. I think Jokinen's a better player than Bolin. And you guys both talked about those those good second line centermen being picked up in Stastny and Brad Richards for St. Louis and Chicago. Those are great pickups by both those teams. Chicago, they didn't have a second line centerman, and now they do. So whether he pans out or not is something we'll see for Chicago. But when you're playing on a line with Patrick Kane, who's set on his way to become the best American hockey player of all time, then you're doing something right. And Michael Camilleri, being signed by New Jersey, that just shows that New Jersey is still living in the early 2000s. They've got so many old players that play on that team. Martin Brodeur is going to be gone, but I mean, they still got Yager and Elias, and now Camilleri. These guys haven't been top players in a long time. Like, they're living in the past. They need to wake up. He got the same amount of money as Matt Molson. and that's just embarrassing. Um, no one else really looks good for me here. Ben Lafayette, a decent third line sniper kind of player, but nothing huge. He's going to Edmonton, but that's about it, really.
I like that. New Jersey living in the early 2000s, they got dinosaurs like Dinus Dubras and Yager. When Yager leads your team in points at 42 years old, you know you had a bad season. Like, and not even so bad that they can start rebuilding with young, good players. Just, no, oh my God, something else.
Yeah, they're in a really bad spot at the draft.
Awkward
Yeah,
moment when Adam Henrique is your best young player.
Oh god.
fail. Hard to believe this team made the cup a couple years ago.
Yeah, New Jersey. If I was a New Jersey fan right now, I would be worried. I would be really worried because that team is going to just be awful real soon. If I was the Sabres, maybe I'd make some trades for a couple years down the line, some of their first picks. Could be a thing. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
we'll give you such and such for your like 2017 first overall pick. You know, right now it doesn't seem like much, but you guys are going to have a terrible team real soon. So
The only problem we have is we don't have any old players that will, you know, fit into their thought process. All of
trade
our
them,
players are under 30 except Gianta. And
trade them Mazzaros.
can't trade him anymore. Yeah, we'll get like a seventh round pick.
Yeah,
I know. It sounds like they don't have a good GM, but it's not Garth Snow.
that's true.
It's not Garth. All right. So I guess we have to do our final words now. Oh shit! Final words. Um,
Whoa.
I know Matt's been watching the whole episode. Thank you for watching. Yeah, like, comment, favorite, subscribe. Final words. Moment of truth. Um, I will have Dylan go first as final word.
All right, I've sort of got two things to have my final word, and there's just something I want to say before. So first, another comment. Uh, Matt posted an interesting thing from Helen St. James, who is a journalist in Detroit, covers Detroit sports. The price for Tyler Myers from Sabres is likely Nyquist, Tatar, Jerko, or Mantha, along with a draft pick. So one of those four, along with a pick, is apparently what our speculated asking price. And Matt goes on to say that'll never happen, but it's fun. And it is fun. I don't want us to trade, like, I'm fine with us trading Myers, but I want a good return. So I'll take Nyquist, Tatar, Jerko, or Mantha along with a draft pick for him. So interesting to think about. Maybe they'll come around and say, hey, let's take Tyler Myers, and they'll end up trading us one of those young depth guys, but who knows? And along with that, I want to say to any viewers, if you've noticed, I've been referencing Matt's comments throughout the video, so please watch whether live or watch it back and comment, and we can discuss it like we have today. And now on to my final word. Sean's not here, so I'm going to take the soccer. And unfortunately, the United States lost on yesterday. But the final score of 2-1 against Belgium. I didn't get to see any of the game. I was at work, but it went to extra time, and all 3 goals were scored in extra time. So it was 0-0 in the 90th minute, and then the final score was 2-1. So it's unfortunate that we lost. A lot of people didn't have us getting out of group stage, being in Group G, the group of death, with Germany and Portugal. And we made it out. So it didn't help us that Altidore had gotten hurt and a couple things like that, but overall, we did better than a lot of people had anticipated in the first place, and it would have been nice to be able to beat Belgium, but realistically, we would have faced Argentina next, and Argentina is who I predicted would win the entire thing. So Lionel Messi is best soccer player in the world. So it would have definitely been a tough game. Tim Howard is amazing. He did very well throughout the tournament. He is definitely the best player on the U.S. soccer roster, in my opinion. And I don't remember how old he is, but he's in his lower 30s, which is kind of old for a soccer player, but the hope is that he will play in the next World Cup. It would definitely hurt us if he did not. So next World Cup, maybe we'll come back a little bit better. I think we had a couple young guys on the team, so maybe they can get better. Jurgen Klinsmann. It was Jurgen Klinsmann's first World Cup as a coach of the United States team, and I think he did well overall. Obviously, we didn't win it, but we did pretty well. We got out of our group. We played, from what I didn't see the game, but from what I can tell, we played Belgium well. Seeing as that we only lost by 1 goal, and it was 0-0 in the 90th minute, so it was a tight game. Although, looking at the stats, Belgium had 38 shots, and 27 of them were on goal, which is incredible for soccer, and which is why I say that Howard is fantastic, because Tim Howard made a ton of saves in that 120 minutes. So it's really impressive. To compare it, the U.S. had 14 shots, 9 on goal. So they had almost double as many shots on goal as we had shots total. And we only lost by 1. But unfortunately, U.S. is out. It's disappointing. Belgium will go on to play Argentina in the next round. And looks like we're going to have to wait another 4 years for soccer. I know you guys are especially upset about that. And that's my final word.
We'll never get to see the dead fish flopping around.
I did.
To see broken noses.
I did hear about the Tim Howard thing, how insane he was. So like, that's the only good thing I heard about the game. And I was like, okay, that's cool. Good for him. Now you assume I'm doing my final word next. I'm going to keep the trend going. Sports stars acting like idiots and getting in trouble. Claude Giroux, who was my vote to be NHL MVP this year, he did something. I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday, but he did a thing that's, what's the thing? I don't know if he was out drinking or what, but he was up in Ottawa. It was yesterday. Okay, he was up in Ottawa, and allegedly there was an incident involving a police officer in which Giroux reportedly grabbed the buttocks of a male officer outside of a bar. So he grabbed some cop's ass, pretty much. And he was arrested, and he was later released with, and there were no charges or anything. But yeah, he grabbed the cop's ass. I'm assuming he was pretty drunk, and maybe he was upset that he got, you know, he lost the MVP thing, and he was taking his sorrows out on the cop. Or maybe even the cop, just maybe Giroux just kind of tapped his ass on accident, and the cop was like, "Ooh, I'm a cop. I can do whatever I want and overreact," and then arrest him. But I don't know. We might never know. But yeah, that's the thing. Claude Giroux arrested, but then he was released without any charges after allegedly grabbing a cop's ass. So there you go.
Sports players being idiots in the real world by Chris Sexton. Um, yeah, it was my MVP vote too. But with him grabbing cops' asses and such, I no, I have to reconsider. Um, my final word, NASCAR, as always. Didn't do a final word last week, so I couldn't say that they were racing at Kentucky, a mile and a half cookie cutter intermediate length track. The difference with Kentucky compared to everything else was it's bumpy. So bumpy that drivers whine and bitch about it all race, all week leading up, and like the 3 days after. And they they raced 200 laps or whatever, and I guess Brad Keselowski won the race. I watched the end of it. Brad Keselowski finished second, and first. Now he raced in the Double A Truck Series, the Triple A Nationwide Series, in Major, which is Sprint. He lost the Double A race by when he was down pit road. His crew had to stick a wrench in the back and tighten a bolt. And the bolt makes your car go faster but handle worse, which means like the ass of the truck will start to slide, or tighten it, which slows your car down but also makes it harder to have it slide all over the place. Well, the guy left the wrench on the truck. Now you're not allowed to let the wrench stay on the truck because if the wrench flies off and hits another vehicle at 160 miles an hour, there's going to be a big problem. So he had to go back down pit road to get the wrench off, battled all the way back to second place, lost. And then in the next race, AAA race, the next night, he led the first 150 of 160 laps. So he was dominating the race. And he went down pit road and sped. He was speeding on pit road. Had to go back through, take a pass through penalty. Was in 23rd place. He finished second. That's how good he was. He raced all the way back to second place. Really shot himself in the foot in both races. So the last race, he wins. Kyle Busch finished second. I believe Dale Earnhardt Jr. finished third. And so Brad won the race. That's good. He won the race. He had a rough weekend ahead of it before that. And when he's celebrating, his sponsor is Miller Lite. So he usually gets hammered on Miller Lite because, it's a sponsor. He's got free beer. Well, he drank champagne and he cut his hand while celebrating with the bottle, fucking around with the bottle, and broke the bottle on his hand and cut his hand wide open. And it was like, oh, so he's an idiot. He He shot himself in the foot the first two races and didn't win, and then he won and he cut his hand. So I guess that's the interesting part of the weekend for NASCAR. This weekend they race at Daytona again, second time this season. It's the Coke 400 Saturday night. Anybody could win the race. Dale Jr. won on the last lap or the second last lap of the Daytona 500 in February. Should be a great race. Don't watch it till the end. There will be a big wreck of like 20 cars. Somebody might flip upside down at 200 miles an hour, and that's always interesting. So, if you want to watch that, it's on Saturday night. And with that, that was our episode of the Golden Sports Report. We got about almost 2 hours, which was kind of anticipated. So that was a good deal. Thank you for dealing with our cancellations on Sunday and Monday, and yeah, stuff like that. So, like, comment, favorite, subscribe. Our views go up. Our views have been going up. They're on the upward trend, and that's a good thing. So, let's keep that up. And yeah, so comment. We'll talk about it next episode. And that was the Golden Sports Report, episode 75. Bye.
Peace out.
Adios.